Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? It's been a couple of weeks since we had a NASCAR live show. Nice to see you all. Liz, NFT Toker, Smoking Guns, Stan, James, Chase the Elliot. Thanks for joining in chat, guys. I'm going to be getting into it here just shortly and just going to share a couple things in the right place, wait for a few more people to come in, and then we will get going here. So just give me a moment, and I will get that done. I posted above, if you're not a member of the Patreon, Jagerbomb's Fantasy Sports Patreon, and you want, access to the full cheat sheet, as well as our coaches in Discord chat, NASCAR only channels, NASCAR news channels, that sort of stuff. I do have the link there, patreon.com/Jagerbombs. I've got the link actually there for the actual NASCAR sheet this week. So go ahead and click on that. You'll have your subscription options there as well. We also have yearly set up now as well. So just give me a few more moments here and we will get started. Just adjust. If you can't hear me or anything, I got a different, my daughter actually lost my good headphones, so I'm using these ones and only one earbud works. I hope the mic works. I haven't seen anyone say I can't hear you yet, so that's a really good sign so far. Just gonna share this here and on Twitter. We will get everyone in and we will rock and roll and talk about the Bristol night race. Always, since I've started watching NASCAR, one of my favorite overall races, Bristol in general, but the night race especially. It has always been one of my favorites. 500 laps tonight, so dominators are definitely key. That's going to be one of the top subjects that we're going to discuss in terms of dominators. So just off the top of my head, not looking at the sheet because I'm just on sharing this on Twitter right now, but we are normally getting 3 to 4, sometimes 5 drivers leading 50 or more laps, and then we get usually 2 to 3 of those drivers that are leading 100 plus. Out of the 500, it's very rare, especially in the new, with the new rules package and stuff, where we see someone absolutely dominate, 300-400 laps. We don't see that a whole lot. It's generally, especially last 2 years, there's been, I think, 7 drivers that have led over 80 laps, and 5 of them have led over 100. So that's what I'm looking at for tonight. In terms of dominators, is I think. Something I did was go to Line Star, and what I did there with that information was I went and took the 2 perfect lineups from last year's races, which I like looking at just simply because they didn't have qualifying versus the 2019, 2018. There were 2 races here per year up until this year because they did the dirt back in the spring for the Bristol race. So that's why I am looking races, but in those 2 races, again, just off the top of my head, I'm going to bring this up in the sheet and share that with you here in just a second. But out of those 2, we had 2 dominators, 2 guys that led 100 plus, mixed in with 4 place differential plays in both of those perfect lineups. Totally different scores, and I'm going to share that here in just a second. One more place to share this, live talking DFS NASCAR. See how many people we can get in here tonight. For this night race and the Saturday, usually a little bit less than the Sunday shows, but we will see. Okay, so talked about Patreon. So now I'm going to bring up the cheat sheet, and we're going to look at that. Just trying to find that share screen here. It's been a while. It's like I almost forgot to do this. Here we go. So this is the perfect lineups for the 2020 Bristol races. And again, this is the perfect lineup. This isn't necessarily the winning lineup, but I believe they were very, very close. So in the spring race, both being 500 laps, we had Erik Jones, Brad Keselowski. He was a dominator, led 115, started on the pole. And then we had Kyle Busch. He started 7th, ended up with 100 laps led. So there's your 2 dominators in that lineup. Kyle Busch was, I believe, the most expensive in that race. Brad Keselowski was a nice little value dominator there. And then we had 3 drivers in the 7K range. They all had place differential. Bubba and Christopher Bell both give you 26 place differential. Ryan Preece in that 6K punt give you 21. And then Erik Jones give you 10. But he was only 7K, put up 61.5 points. So he was most definitely in that winning lineup. And then in the fall race, we had Mcdowell, 5,900. So we had 2 punt plays in this one. We had Chris Buescher and Michael McDowell. Picking up 16 and 17 place differential points. Erik Jones, again, 17 place differential points. He was 94 in this race, so 2,400 more for Erik Jones in that fall race last year, still managed to make the winning lineup. Then we had Kevin Harvick, who led 226 laps, won the race from the 4 starting spot. He was one of the most expensive, I believe, top 3. And then we had Kyle Busch again. His price had dropped off $2,000 since that early spring race, and he went up and put up 159 laps led in that one as well. So he was a dominator in both of those races. Brad Keselowski was a dominator in both those races, but Kevin Harvick made the perfect lineup in terms of that fall race last year. And then Tyler Reddick was in there at 6,600 as well, started 17th and finished 4th. It was an excellent debut for him, or excellent race for him in the Cup Series here at Bristol. So what I was mentioning earlier as I was kind of tweeting things out there was that both of these races last year saw the winning line. I'm not going to call this the winning lineup. I know it was very close. I believe the winning lineups were very, very similar to this in the larger GPPs, but we saw 2 dominators and 4 place differential both times. And we've seen 496 points in the fall race. A lot of that has to do with how many laps Kevin Harvick. So when we see those dominators in these races with a lot of laps, obviously going out there and leading more than what you'd see on average, then we get these higher scores. So almost 10x it took to get there, but a lot of that came from Harvick and Kyle Busch, who obliterated their prices. They both put up way over 10x. So we didn't even need that out of these guys down here. And then 422 points in that spring race, 8.5x. So that's generally what we're going to need is 8 to 10x to win a GPP. You're going to feel safe with probably 6 to 7x somewhere in there. So that's kind of what we're going to break down here this week. So generally we're going to need, again, your 2 dominators are going to give you really good value. So we're not necessarily going to need that 6 to 7x from every single driver. So just kind of keep that in mind, and it all depends on your projections in terms of laps led. So let's just jump into that, jump into that, whatever. So right at the top of the salary this week, in terms of laps led, this is what I'll talk about first because dominators are going to be key. I believe in building your lineups. Whether you agree with my picks or not this week, you're going to need 2 dominators. So what I would do to build the core of your lineup is first nail down those 2 dominators that you like. And if you're doing like a 20, if you're doing single enter, you really got to nail it down to those 2. If you're doing a 20 max, I have about 3 or 4 drivers that I'm looking at that can possibly lead and be dominators today, even up to 5. So what I would probably do is narrow it down to my favorite 2 if I'm doing 20 max, and probably run 5 to 8 lineups just around those 2 drivers as a core. So that if you get those 2 drivers right and they finish 1, 2, and they dominate the, let's just say 50% of the laps, they're most likely going to be in the winning lineup, and you're going to have a lot more chances to build around them if you're doing multi-entry, obviously. So you really just got to go ahead and decide who you like the most. For me, I really like Denny Hamlin. He's coming in with some form. He's been good here in the past. Obviously, the last 2 haven't been good. Last year were pretty terrible. And I actually have some notes on these last year's races, just simply because I wanted to compare because we didn't have qualifying. So again, I said I'm looking for 3 to 4 dominators, 50 plus, 2 to 3 dominators, 100 plus. There were 7 drivers who led 80 plus last year between the 2 races, and 5 of them had 100 plus. So again, that kind of backs up that dominator narrative. All 7 started top 10 as well, and pole sitter Keselowski both times led 80 plus in both. Both races saw perfect lineups on DK with 2 dominators and 4 place differential plays. Kyle Busch and Eric Jones were the only 2 drivers to finish top 10 in both those races. And then Ryan Preece, Michael McDowell, Austin Dillon, Kevin Harvick, and Kurt Busch were the only other 2 drivers that finished top 20 in both those races last year. So just a little bit of notes there in terms of the Bristol races last year. But back to Denny here. Off the bat, he did win and dominate back in 2019. He's been pretty consistent here over the years, and like I said, he's starting second, and I don't see Truex whatsoever. Truex has really struggled with this track. He hasn't had a top 10 since 2017, and only 2 in his last 10 races here. It's just not one of his best tracks. Starting on the pole, I don't like that at all. I think Denny gets out there early ahead of Truex and gets those early laps led, so he is my top dominator today. And then obviously, so what I did here was just come in, and usually we see about 25 to 40% of the laps led total comes with the fast laps. So I'm going about 100 and then 25 fast laps. I think Larson, these are my 2 favorite dominators right off the bat, is these 2, Larson and Hamlin. I mean, you can go and adjust these a little bit more and say 150. We did see that in these races, so I think we can kind of crank this up to, say, 50 and 40. So that would be 100 plus points for these guys. That's 9 to 10x right there. So those are those top two dominators. I think Kyle Busch can be a dominator. Well, maybe not most recently, but over the course of his career, this is his best track. This is kind of when I got into NASCAR when Kyle Busch was absolutely dominating in every series, going and sweeping the Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup Series over and over again. Not sweeping over and over again, but just the amount of wins. This is by far his favorite track. As you can see, he's got top fives in 4 straight, wins in 3 of 4 here in 2017 to 2019. He's top 5 in both races last year. He started 9th to give us some place differential value as well as dominator value as well. So if we had to go that way, this is kind of how I like shaking it out here, and that is going to give us 400 of those laps. I think Elliot's got a chance to be one of those dominators. That gets us up to 450, I believe, and then one other dominator. Rate just kind of off the bat that I do like. I like Harvick because he's done it here before. Harvick's price at 9K is awesome. I absolutely love it. He's going to be even without those dominator points, Harvick can get almost to 6x with a win and no dominator points. So you give him some dominator points, give him 50 laps, maybe 15 fast laps in there. We're talking about 8x out of him. So definitely like that. Harvick play at 9K. That makes a lot of sense. Kurt Busch starting 15th. We've talked about his, or we will talk about his experience here. It has been really consistent. 15th in that fall race last year, but 7th, 9th, 2nd, 1st, 22nd, 5th. He's most definitely got top 5 and winning upside at this track starting 15th. So he's going to be a core play for me here as well. So those are 2 in that 9K range. And then for me, it's going to come down to decide in between. You could even throw Chase Elliott in here. He's led some laps here before. The finishes haven't been where I'd like to see them recently, like 5th isn't going to do it for him. We're going to need a top 3 and some dominator points out of him, so he would fall to probably a GPP play. My top 2, Hamlin and Larson, obviously, and then Busch and Elliott. Right close behind that. Busch over Elliott, even though he is more expensive, 1,000 more, he does give us those 5 extra place differential points. He's dominated more here. He's got more experience here, so these 3 are almost core plays in terms of the top 3 on the board, but most of my lineups are going to contain 2 out of the 3 of those as the core, or let's just say 2 out of the 4 of those is where I'm going to be starting my lineups. Like I said, Larson and Hamlin right now are my favorites, so I'm going to go and build 5 to 8 lineups around them. So let's just go plug them in, and then we'll just start going down the board here a little bit. If we're going to be going stars and scrubs like this and picking 2 of the 4 of them, we're going to have to go down the board and look at some value. So that's where I'm going to go next, and then I'm going to talk about maybe some pivots that I like in this mid to upper range if you're not going with 2 of these guys. So just give me a minute here. Before I move on, I do want to go and just check on some of these questions. I don't want to miss any of these for you guys. Would love to see Matty D win as well. NFT Toker. Love the NFT as well. That's awesome. We've been a lot into the DraftKings NFT and Discord lately with the drops, and next week is huge. We got the Tiger Woods drop next week, so you can bet I will be on what do we have? 8 drops. All 8 of those drops waiting and just praying to get Tiger Woods one. But anyways, that's just another thing we've added to our Discord chat. But moving on here, scrolling down. A wreck fest or clean until the end? Well, that's really just, I think obviously we're going to see, I'm going to predict right now 2 to 3 fairly major wrecks. I don't know how I guess that would include, by major wreck, I'm going to say that 3 or 4 cars are going to be out of the race because of them. And with Bristol, you can get a lot of damage, and it's not affecting the aero as much on a half-mile track. So you're going to see a lot of cars with damage that are going to be back on the track. So out of the race is one thing, but wrecks, it depends how you classify that. And cars that are going to be completely out of the race, I only see, like, in terms of, if we go ahead and cross off some of these guys down here at the bottom, obviously, if we're talking main drivers, let's just say in this Ryan Preece and up range, I think we maybe lose 3 or 4 of those cars that go behind the wall because of accidents, but I do think we see 4 to 5 accidents. This is the last race before the end of round 1. There's a lot of drivers that are, looking towards wins to get in, and I'm actually going to bring up the NASCAR stand-ins here real quick, and we'll have a look at those drivers just, to add to that narrative here a little bit. Go to playoff stand-ins. Pop this over on the screen here. All right, so the bottom 4 right now, we've got Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Almirola, and Kurt Busch. So, again, Kurt Busch is going to be going for the win, so I do like that a little bit more for him. I talked about liking him, and he's going to be a core play for me at his starting position. I think he's either going to finish top 5 or he's going to wreck. He needs a win to move on. Same with Kyle Busch. I don't think he exactly needs a win. He's only 8 points back of the cut line. So not overly concerned there that he can still get in on points. We may see some strategy come out of that for him. Oh, sorry, here's the bubble here. I needed to scroll down. My bad. I'm thinking it's the next round already. I'm already fast-forwarding in the season about a month. But so these guys are ahead, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then we've got Bowman and Busch are very close, right on the line. So this is going to be big in terms of strategy. So the drivers that are going to be looking for wins to move on, obviously, we got McDowell. Byron, 18 points. That's going to be tough to make up 18 points. So he's probably going to be looking for a win as well, going to be aggressive in there. We got Tyler Reddick, who's only 5 points behind. So it's really going to depend how the first stage goes for, let's say, Reddick, Bowman, Kurt Busch, and Almirola. Even Kyle Busch is only 8 points up. Those drivers, it's really going to depend what happens, I think, in the first stage of the race, in what happens in the final stage in terms of, are they going to be going for points? Are they going to be pitting early before the end of stage 2? So they set themselves up for that final round. It's really tough to tell right now because it is very, very close between 5 of those drivers right on the bubble. So pay attention to that when you're choosing between the drivers. But moving on here to a couple drivers in this bottom tier that I do like a lot. First of all, Erik Jones, obviously. We talked about him being in the perfect lineup 2 straight years. The price is now down a little bit on him, or 2 straight years, 2 straight races in 2020. This was in this 43 car. So he finished 3rd and 5th, 6,400. Just this price with how well he's done with 4 top 5s in his last 7 races here. Sure, he can finish 20th to 25th. It's not going to absolutely destroy your lineup, especially if you're playing cash games. A 15th to 25th isn't going to kill you, and that's kind of looks like his downside outside of a wreck. When I talk upside and downside with guys at Bristol, especially Daytona, Talladega, I always think of it as it's going to be a perfect race, and there is going to be no wrecks. And unicorns are going to fly out of my butt. But that's the way we kind of got to look at it because we can't predict wrecks and who's going to be in them at what time of the race. So Erik Jones is definitely a core play starting 22nd. Chris Buescher is right up there. As you can see, he's 10th in my model, starting 25th. He finished 8th here in the fall race, the playoff race last year, 23rd in the spring, 17th and 22nd in 2019. So he doesn't have a long line of consistency here, especially with the 25th starting position. But if we go look at it here, he does give us top 10 upside, obviously, and I think his consistency among the drivers in this range is definitely up there and is going to be one of the favorites. There's a lot of place differential outside that top 20 starting position in this 6K to 7K range. Jones is definitely my favorite because of experience here, starting position. And then Buescher, 33.5 points. That puts him right around a 17th, 18th place finish. So I don't think that's out of it at all. I think, like I said, he's got top 10 upside. I think it takes a lot for him to get that top 10. I think the odds of it happening are fairly low. I've got him more in, say, his upside of 12th to 15th, which does put him in that 6X range. So I definitely like Chris Buescher there. I think possibly Chase Briscoe, who hasn't raced here in Cup, but if we go look at his Xfinity, he's finished 4th, 2nd, 2nd, 1st in his last 4 Xfinity races here. He likes this track. He's starting 20th. I think he's going to be lower owned. So if you're looking for some separation off of chalk, if you are going, say, Larson Hamlin, and you are going with, say, core of Larson Hamlin Jones, it's going to be pretty chalky, I believe. So if you want to maybe not use Buescher or Cole Custer or even Ryan Newman up here, I do like Briscoe starting 20th. I think he's going to be a little bit lower owned than these guys because he doesn't have any Cup history. If people aren't looking at Xfinity, plus he's starting 20th. All these other guys in this range are starting a little bit further back. And I know when people are building lineups, especially, public people that aren't, excuse me, I got some in my throat today, that aren't in like a chat or, reading a ton of articles or watching YouTube videos or anything like that, are naturally just going to go to the guys that they know have experience, 1, and 2, just have more place differential upside. So I think Briscoe gives us a little bit of separation there. So I definitely like Briscoe in this lineup build. And just that right there with 3 chalk and 1 separation play, we'll call it, which is a place differential play as well. not a whole bunch of place differential with Briscoe, but I'll take a 15th out of him for sure, is it puts us into that mid 7K range now. So there's a couple things we can do here. I'm going to go back and check questions because I don't have it up. So just give me a second. I'm going to keep going back and forth. Hey, Dane, how's it going? Nice to see you join the show. I know Dane is at the track tonight, along with Eric Jones, one of our Discord members as well. Not Eric Jones. Obviously, the driver, Eric Jones, is at the track, I would hope, or else I'm playing him for nothing, throwing money away. But we actually have a Discord member. His name's Eric Jones as well. Him and Dane are at the track watching the race tonight. Super, super jealous, sitting here in front of my computer watching it on TV. But either way, thanks for joining in the show. Truly appreciate it, Dane. I want to know, Dane, who your favorite value play is. I really don't think you're going to be going to Alfredo this week, but I really need to know. Haven't talked to you in a while. All right. Priest. I'm probably going to be lower than the field on Priest. I think he's going to be a little bit higher owned, starting 27th. So this is one of those pivots off of Briscoe and Jones. He falls right in the middle. He's starting 27th, so he's got the most place differential of all these guys down here. He's finished 9th and 12th, 18th and 25th, which we'll take any of those. I mean, if that's his ceiling and his floor, that is a tremendous value. Let's go look at his. I was looking at him earlier. I'm going to have some exposure, but again, I'm going to be a little bit lower than the field. Average run of 20th over the last 5 races. He's got a top 5 in there. I believe that will be Daytona. So let's remove Daytona. Very awesome to see that 12th place finish at Darlington to open the playoffs, 25th last week. So there's kind of like his floor and his upside. So yes, I like Priest. I'm going to be a little bit lower on him. I'm not going to have as many lineups, so I'm looking to play these chalk guys up top, but I'm looking to separate. So I'm going to have Briscoe I'm probably going to have 3 to 5 lineups. I'm going to have a little bit more Briscoe. But if I was doing 20 max, 150 max, whatever, lots of lineups, I would definitely have probably in the range of 20 to 25%, maybe even upwards of 30 with Priest. And I would have it spread pretty evenly with Briscoe, actually, if I was doing more lineups. I'm just looking for that little bit more separation in my minimal amount of lineups that I'm doing. So I do like Briscoe a little bit more. And then, of course, I like Jones, my favorite guy down in this range. So those are 3 guys that I like down here. Talked about Buescher as well. Ryan Newman. What I don't like with Newman, he's more expensive than these guys. Yes, he's got more experience, and things were really awesome there for a long time, 2016 to 2019. But as you can see, from 2019 to 2020, his finishes progressively got worse. I don't like to see a driver that comes back to the same track, especially a track that they go to twice a year, and just see consistently getting worse finishes. So that's a bad trend for me. That trend could easily turn around. As you can see, he went with the 9th place here in 2016, came back, finished 28th, then 14th, 6th, and then it was just like 10th to 12th for a long time. But being more expensive and him just kind of looking like it's getting towards the end of his career, at least full-time, I do like these youngsters down here a little bit more. And I like the equipment a little bit more with some of these guys down here as well. So I'll have even less than the field of Newman up here, especially. I don't know where any ownership projections are going to be this week in terms of these guys down here, but I would think Newman, just with his name, is going to take some on. But he won't be the most popular. But I'm not the biggest a fan. I'm probably only going to have I know in my 5 lineups I'm not going to have any Newman, but if I was doing 20 max, it would be 1 to 2 tops with Newman, because I do like the guys that are cheaper. I like their upside a lot more. All right, so Matty D. Oh, Mcdowell. Okay, I'll answer James's second question here on Mcdowell. Yes, I do like Mcdowell. Obviously, there's a little bit more risk here with him starting 16th, but he's had 2 tremendous, after like crash after crash after crash for the longest time in 2018 and 19. He couldn't stay out of a crash. He was awesome last year, finishing 14th and 10th. And at that price, at $5,400, is what makes it really, really interesting, is we're only looking for about 27 to 32 points. Well, that is a 13th to 16th. That's where he's finished the last 2 years. I think it is maybe a stretch to say that's his floor at 16th. I think his floor is probably around more like 20th, which is not going to get you there. That's going to be a little bit short of 4X. So you really need him to hit what he did last year, I guess. So it just seems like it's a little bit more risk to tap into any sort of upside with him, because if you want to get 6X, you need those 32, and you're kind of in that 13th, 14th kind of range. for him. So there's just a little bit more risk. So again, he's going to be probably in that same range of exposure to me as Newman. Because I do like Buescher, Jones, Briscoe, even Preece. I do like Preece a little bit more than McDowell here as well. So, but my top three, if we're going to go through these value plays now and maybe just rank them, it would be Jones, Briscoe, Buescher, Preece, Newman, Preece, McDowell, then Newman. Newman would be last out of those 5 or 6 in terms of my exposure down in this range, which I'm probably going to have 2 or 3 drivers down this range. As we've seen from these perfect lineups, I'm going to go back to them here. Our build was a little more stars and scrubs in the fall race last year. We had Kevin Harvick 11.6, 10.4 for Kyle, and we had 94 with Eric Jones. So we did have 3 top tier, and then we had 59, 6K, and 66. So stars and scrubs is really how these builds have gone at Bristol recently, especially. So that's the way I'm going to be building. It was a little bit more balanced because the laps led were spread out a little bit more in the spring race. But we did still have 2 dominators and 4 place differential plays and 4 plays 7,500 or less. So this is definitely a key range, and stars and scrubs is definitely the way I'm going to be going this week. Once again, I'm going to follow that trend. So I'm a little bit less on, say, guys like Kurt Busch, unless you're maybe going, like, if you were to go and grab, let's just go to this mid-range. Let's not even do Kurt Busch. Let's do Kevin Harvick. So that leaves you 63. So then we come down here. If we were to grab Jones and Briscoe, like I talked about, that leaves you 6,300. So that's still not bad. Then it gives you a choice. If you're going off of my player pool, gives me a choice anyway of Preece or McDowell. Those are the only 2 kind of down in this range that I'm going to be looking at. So I don't mind that at all. We get 3 possible dominators, top 5 upside guys. I think Larson and Hamlin definitely are top 3 drivers tonight if they stay out of wrecks. Harvick, I think his upside is obviously is a win. I don't think it's going to happen. I think his upside is more like 3rd, maybe a podium finish, 3rd to 5th. I think he can get up and lead some laps, though, so I do like that play. You could even go and get Kurt Busch in here as well. But then we have to go and downgrade one of these guys. I mean, you can take out Eric Jones. You're left with 6,100. That kind of brings us into that Michael McDowell. I'm not liking that build quite as much. But if I was doing lots, those are kind of the ways I'm going to mix in my Larson and Hamlin build. And I'm probably, like I said, if I'm doing 20 max, and right now I'm only doing 5. If I get time, I might finish off that 20 max, is Larson Hamlin about 5 to 8 times out of those 20. And then what I would probably do is go and build Hamlin and Busch. It would be my second favorite, so I'm probably going to do 3 to 5 of those. And then probably some Busch and Larson as well, maybe 2 to 3 of those. And that's kind of the way I'm going to build. And then if you want to mix in Logano, it really comes down to who you want to mix in. I mean, out of those top guys, I do like getting 2 or 3 of these guys in the, let's say, 9K and up. So no matter what your player pool looks like, whether it matches mine, whether we agree or we don't, I like grabbing, in terms of lineup construction, 3 of these guys in here. And it all depends how much of a stars and scrubs lineup it is. If you go with the higher up, you go with your 3, obviously. So Harvick really fits in nice at 9K at the bottom of this range. He's had awesome track history here compared to the guys above him in price, starting 8th. So he would be my favorite of the, if you're going with 2 of Elliot, Hamlin, Larson, Busch, Harvick would be my next addition to that lineup, kind of like I showed here, if you're going to the extreme kind of stars and scrubs. If you're not, and you feel like this mid-range, it's hard to ignore Keselowski, who has been a dominator in each of the last 2. Obviously got in a wreck in that one in the fall race last year, but win in the 3rd and the 2 races before that. He's only 8,600, starting 10th with winning upside. Just tells me right there that he's a good play. So he would hit if he won the race without dominating. He only got the last lap pass, no fast laps. He's going to give you 6x for the win. At 8,600, that's tremendous. I think he has an outside chance of maybe getting up there and leading, let's say, 50 laps as well. That would put him even over. He'd be in the 7-8x range. So he has potential to, for sure, once again, be in the winning lineup like he was in the spring race last year, and probably would have been if he didn't get in a wreck in the fall race as well. Starting 10th, He's been good here, and just at that $8,600 price tag, I don't think we can ignore that. So he would be my favorite there. And then moving down to your question about Matty D NFT, he would be – I like Austin Dillon a little bit more, and the reason for that is he has just been more consistent here. He's got top 15s in 5 of his last 6 races here. With a wreck in the middle of that, he's also got upside of a 6th. Don't get me wrong, Matty D has a 2nd here in the playoff race in 2019, but his overall consistency isn't the same. They've got pretty much same price tag, same starting spot. So I have Dillon over DiBenedetto, and then I do like Keselowski starting 10th a little more because of his upside. So I think if you're looking for another place to separate a little bit, if you have 3 or 4 chalky plays in your lineup already, is Matty D. I think Keselowski and Dillon are both going to be higher owned. Even with Harvick there, that's going to drive down the ownership of this range. And then, like I said, Stars and Scrubs going to be a core build for a lot of people. So you're going to see a lot of 2 or 3 of the 9K and up range, and then down into that mid 7K to 6K range. So this range automatically is going to be lower owned to begin with. And then, like I said, Matty D, I think, is going to be lower owned than Keselowski and Dillon. So he makes a good GPP pivot with obviously top 10 upside, just not as consistent as upside as Dillon. So if it's cash games, I would go Austin Dillon. GPP, I do like pivoting some of that ownership of Dillon over to Matty D. So that kind of covers pretty much my whole entire player pool. Thoughts on Blaney? GPP play, he's going to be a pivot off of Busch and Harvick. I think he's going to come a little bit lower owned, even though he's been red hot. So that's awesome to see that he's, got that form. He's led laps here before, 339 laps, which I believe is second to only Kyle Busch over the last 5 races. So huge upside here. But I think people are going to gravitate to Kurt Busch starting 15th and Kevin Harvick starting 8th, a little bit more than Blaney. But again, there's another pivot right there. So while we are going to see some chalky lineups tonight and some chalky drivers, if you're playing GPP and heavy GPP and multi-entering, Blaney, Brad Keselowski, Matt DiBenedetto, some of these guys in this, let's say mid-7 to mid-9K range, I think you're going to come a little bit lower on, and this is a great place to kind of give yourself some separation in your lineup. So yes, Stan, Blaney would be in my GPP pool. I'm going to be a little bit lower on. I don't think you need to be overweight on the field with him. I don't think he's going to reach crazy ownership levels in this range. I think Kurt Busch, Elliot, Hamlin, Larson, Kyle Busch are all going to be higher owned. So he's going to be, and then obviously after those guys in ownership, you're going to go down to your Eric Jones, your Ryan Newmans, your Chris Buschers, guys like that are going to take some ownership because of the Stars and Scrubs build. So that's going to naturally drop some of these guys' ownership. So I do like Blaney as a possible low-owned, high-upside type GPP play. Tyler Reddick, yes. I think people will go to Wallace because of the place differential. He's finished ahead of where he started in 4 straight with 3 top 20s and 2 top 15s. I think so. I do like Bubba a little bit here. Probably a little bit more for cash games. Reddick's going to be a pivot off of that for sure. He was another driver I wanted to go look at on the Xfinity before he came over. So his last races, so in 2019 he finished 2nd and then won the race. And he won that one starting from the rear, starting 38th in Richard Childress equipment in both of those. So that's good to see that he came into the Cup Series with a lot of track history from the Xfinity Series. So he was good there, got in a crash in his first Cup race, and then turned around and got a 4th place finish. So starting 13th, again, I think it's a little bit more risky to tap into that 4th place kind of upside, which is only going to put him, a 4th place would only get him just over 6X. I think he needs to give you some dominator points, whether that be some fast laps, even 10, 15 laps led to kind of get you into that 7X, possibly 8X range. So he doesn't really give you that 8X upside or 8 or 9X upside. And his ceiling for me kind of is that top 5, which gives you that 6X. So he's not my favorite. I'm not going to be too high on him, but I think he's a total viable option if something happens to Wallace and he wrecks out and he's 2 times the ownership. And then going up here to Austin Dillon, I think he's another guy that kind of falls between some ownership guys. And I don't think both guys, if you're choosing a guy who's going to be, say, half the ownership or quite a bit lower owned, sandwiched between two guys that are going to be high owned, you don't necessarily need both of those high owned drivers to have a bad race. One of them having a bad race might just be enough to get you in, at least into cash and close to the top optimal lineup if you want to get into the top 5, even the top 2% of a GPP and kind of win. So that can definitely happen without him hitting 7X for sure. With one of these guys that are going to be a little bit higher owned, something happening to them. All right, so that covers that. I'm going to take a quick drink here. Throat's starting to feel a little bit better. Talk a couple bets. So the betting market's a little tough. Something I like doing here. You got Larson and Kyle Busch at plus 400, Hamlin at plus 600. So Hamlin will be my favorite there just because we get a little bit more value out of that. Elliot at plus 750. So I liked all of those top 4 drivers. So these are obviously the best value out of those two. But what I would probably do, I don't really like, I guess Harvick maybe as a long shot, plus 1100. Or Blaney plus 1,200. That's probably where I would go if you're just doing like a single bet. One of those two, Harvick or Blaney, to win here. Cheesy, you got even Kozlowski here. This is pretty good numbers on these guys that have won or been close to winning at Bristol before. So I do like these, and I probably bet 2 or 3 of these. I do leaning right now probably with Harvick and Kozlowski. If you did want to bet, like, say, a Larson, Kyle Busch, or Denny Hamlin, mix it with an NFL bet. Pick a favorite tomorrow in NFL that you were going to bet anyway, either on the spread or maybe something in like the minus 120 to minus 150 range if you're betting the money line, and throw your driver with that team. The driver like Larson. So Larson and whatever, New England, let's say, and do maybe a couple parlays that way with some of these guys to get a little bit more value on there. That's something I might think about. But generally, if I'm just doing one bet on NASCAR, it's Harvick or Kozlowski for me, just because of the value. Do I think they're going to win more than Larson, Busch, or Hamlin? Hell no. I think for sure the winner is going to come out of these guys. So these bets, well, why would you bet these guys? It's just simply because of value. We know that wrecks can happen, and these guys from these ranges can definitely come out and win. It's not guaranteed. If it was a perfect race, yes, one of these 4, I wouldn't bet outside of it. But being that I think there's going to be 4 or 5 different crashes with 3 to 4 drivers going into the race, I definitely like taking the value in terms of betting with NASCAR rather than taking these low lines. All right, PrizePicks. Something I wanted to talk about as well. I added that to the sheet here. Let me navigate over that. Inspection issues. Okay, let me pull up my NASCAR news channel here real quick. NASCAR news. Okay, just kind of scrolling down through. I think the drivers I read before we started here that all the drivers in the playoffs had made it through. I'm just looking for a final tally here before we wrap things up. Competition caution is lap 40 I am reading as well. No multiple failures in pre-race inspection. No one going to the rear at this point. Okay, so that's awesome. We don't have to worry about that whatsoever. So no one going to the rear. Yeah, good luck, James. I really appreciate you all tuning in here to the Saturday night show. Before I go here, I just want to go over a couple prize picks that I do like. So I'm probably going to be running 3 picks on PrizePicks tonight, and it's an interesting board. Kyle Busch, you have to pay for a 4th or better if you're going the over. Now, what I've got here on the sheet is the finish position. So if you're going the over on PrizePicks points, then you want the under on these start-finish positions. I know it's backwards, but PrizePicks lists their projections in points, fantasy points. And also keep in mind with this being a 500-lap race, when you go ahead and pick your 2, let's say 2, we'll call them super dominators, are going to lead 100-plus laps. Every 100 laps gets you 1 extra fantasy point on PrizePicks. So if you're looking at Denny Hamlin and you feel he's going to lead over 100 laps, instead of him needing a 5th or better, if he gets 100 laps led, he now only needs a 4th or better. So keep that in mind for your dominators when you're looking at it. If you don't think a driver is going to dominate or dominate more than, say, 50 laps led is half a point, and that's kind of what your lines are here, is a half a point to give you those over-under. So if you don't think they lead 50 laps, don't worry about laps led. If you do, and you already thought Hamlin was going to do better in the top 5, which I do, that's my top pick. I'm going to highlight a green here right now, and it's going to be the over. I'm not even going to put the over there. It's going to confuse people. I'm playing the over on points. Hamlin's going to get better than a 5th or better, which I think he's going to be a dominator as well, so that's going to help. Even 50 laps led is going to put him at a 5th. So if he finishes 5th, gets 50 laps led, it's going to be a push on him. If he leads 51 laps, that is a win. If he finishes 5th. If he finishes anywhere ahead of 5th, that's fine. If he leads 100-plus laps, he only needs a 4th. So Hamlin is definitely my favorite. I was thinking about Kyle Busch, but, I mean, I do like Hamlin a little bit better. I've got Hamlin to win the race over Larson. One of these two are obviously my favorites. So that's the way I'm looking at it. I think Larson, because it says right now he needs a 5th or better if you're betting the over, I like that Larson number 2. I think these two guys are both top 3 tonight. I think they both lead laps, which also lowers these PrizePicks finishing position numbers. So those are my 2 favorite. Obviously, if you want to add someone else into there, Kurt Busch at a 9th or better, I do like. That's happened for him in 4 of his last 5. Not so much on Blaney. He hasn't finished 9th or better since the spring race of 2019 and then the fall race of 2018. So the consistency just hasn't been there for me. No on Logano, just not consistent here. Truex, same thing. And for these guys, I mean, I don't personally bet unders for NASCAR, which would be obviously worse than this 10.5 here. But Martin Truex Jr. would be one that I would definitely consider betting the under fantasy score over 10.5 finishing position on PrizePicks. It's kind of like the unders in baseball. I don't really play the unders. I like targeting the overs because I guess we're used to playing DFS and we're always looking for fantasy points. We're not looking for guys to fail. So that's like a totally different mindset. So that's just kind of the way I go, is I like the overs kind of thing because that's what we're looking for in terms of DFS research, and I'm just correlating that all together. So definitely Larson and Hamlin. Going down the board, I do like Kevin Harvick. He needs to just finish better than where he is starting, so I definitely like that one as well. I think he can lead some laps where if he does finish 8th, I think that's going to be totally fine. No on Christopher Bell for me. Kozlowski is close at 9.5. Top 3 in 2 of his last 3. Other than that, it hasn't been really too consistent whatsoever, so he's more of a GPP play for me in DFS, as well as maybe like a 4th or 5th option for PrizePicks. Austin Dillon, 14.5. I think that is another one that I'm going to, it would be another 3rd, 4th, 5th kind of addition to the Larson, Hamlin, Harvick builds there for your PrizePicks, because he's finished better than 14th or 14th or better in 4 of his last 5 and 15th or better in 5 of his last 6. So there, and then going back even further, he's got 2 more top 15s in there. So actually he's finished where he would need to go the over on fantasy in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of his last 9 races here. That is pretty darn consistent for Bristol. He really does well in avoiding the wrecks here. So I could see a 10th, 12th out of him. That's kind of where I got him pegged anyway. Let's even say 8th to 12th. So I do like that number for PrizePicks. So if I was going 3 or 4 picks, this would be my top 4 for tonight. Larson, Hamlin, Harvick, and Dillon. Those are all over on fantasy score, under on these finishing positions, which I've got listed on the sheet. All right, that's going to wrap things up. It's about 45 minutes. Got time to go build out some lineups. I don't think I'm going to make my 20 max, but I am going to finish my 5 to 10 lineups that I'm going to do for tonight. If you have any questions, join me in Discord chat, in DFSR chat. Hit me up on Twitter at Jaeger_bombs9. Comment on the video below. Heck, you can even reach me on Facebook. I'm on there as well. TikTok, Instagram. Geez, I'm almost anywhere. Just search Chris Durrell on the internet and find me. I'll even give out my cell number. You can just give me a call and we can have a conversation. Kidding. Not going to happen. Have a good night, everyone. Let's see some green screens. See you in the final.